She wasn't born with a sword in her hand, but with a pen. She was a teacher, a daughter, a sister, but when war came, Teresa Magbanua picked up a bolo and led an army. Not as a symbol, not as a mascot, but as a commander, against three empires: Spain, America, and Japan. They called her the Visayan Joan of Arc, but Joan only fought in one war. Teresa? She never stopped. This is the story of a woman who refused silence. A warrior who walked into battle when the world expected her to stay home. And today, barely anyone remembers her name. Let's fix that. Teresa Magbanua was born on October 13, 1868, in Camanchian, Patotan, Iloilo, an island lush with sugar plantations and memories of old revolts. She came from a wealthy mestizo family. Her parents, Alejandro Magbanua and Prudencia Ferraris, were part of the landed gentry. They expected their daughter to be refined, obedient, perhaps a teacher, maybe a wife of a wealthy man. But from the beginning, Teresa was different. She rode horses like a soldier. She handled firearms like she was born for battle. Her brothers taught her how to shoot. Her uncles took her on hunting trips. She wasn't like the other girls, and didn't want to be. She pursued higher education, rare for women then, studying in Haro and later in Manila. She obtained a teaching certificate from the Colegio de Doña Cecilia and went on to get her master's from the University of Santo Tomas, the oldest university in Asia. When she returned to Iloilo, she didn't just teach, she led. Her students weren't just young minds, they were the future of a country under foreign control. But all of this, it was just preparation for the war ahead. In 1896, the Philippine Revolution erupted in Luzon. By 1898, the fire reached the Visayas. When the revolutionaries in Panay began organizing, Teresa stood up. She wanted to join, but the men said no. She was a woman. She had no military training. Her role, they said, was to support from the sidelines. But Teresa wasn't asking permission. She demanded a command. She went to her uncle, General Perfecto Poblador, who led the local revolutionary movement. He hesitated. This was war, not a classroom. But Teresa pushed. She argued. She challenged. Eventually, he relented. He gave her command of a bolo battalion, men armed with blades, not guns. Farmers, laborers, fishermen, untrained, unorganized, but loyal, and under her leadership, they became deadly. She drilled them daily in secret jungles. Discipline, movement, flanking. She led by example, refusing special treatment. She camped in the dirt, ate what they ate, sharpened her own blade, slept with a bolo under her mat. They called her Na-isa, not out of pity, out of loyalty. December 3, 1898, Battle of Barrio Yating, Capiz. It was her first true engagement. The Spanish garrison was dug in, with modern rifles. Teresa's men had bolos, makeshift shields, and courage. She split her battalion into 3 waves. The first would charge and draw fire. The second would flank. The third would strike from behind. She rode a horse through the gunfire, shouting orders, pulling wounded men back, urging them forward. And by nightfall, the Spanish had retreated. Victory. Not long after came the Battle of Sapong Hills near Serra, Iloilo. Again, she led over 1,000 men. Again, she faced better armed enemies. And again, she won. With every victory, her legend grew. She wasn't just fighting battles. She was tearing down the image of what a Filipina was supposed to be. Her name was now whispered by rebels, cursed by colonizers, and respected even by the enemy. When Spain surrendered the Philippines to the United States in the Treaty of Paris, the revolutionaries were betrayed. They fought for freedom, only to be sold. But Teresa wasn't about to stop. In February 1899, the Americans bombarded Iloilo City. The resistance crumbled. Teresa retreated, but not in defeat. She regrouped, reorganized, waited. Then in March 10, 1899, during the Battle of Balintang, she led the charge that retook Haro. She entered the city on a white horse, bolo held high, flanked by cheering fighters. The people of Haro came out to meet her like a hero returned from legend. It was her greatest victory, but also the beginning of the end. Her brother Pascual, a general, died mysteriously. Her other brother, Elias, also perished. She was now the last Magbanua fighting. But she didn't break. After Balintang, The American response was brutal. Superior numbers, artillery, scorched earth. The resistance in the Visayas faltered. Commanders surrendered, families fled, but Teresa took to the hills. She led guerrilla warfare, hit-and-run raids, ambushes, supply line sabotage. She fought not for victory now, but for dignity. She was hunted. Her home was raided. She went months without sleep under a roof. By 1900, the resistance was broken. She made the decision, surrender. Not because she was beaten, but because her men needed to live. But history would forget that kind of strength. She faded from public life. The Americans didn't jail her, but they didn't honor her either. She moved to Mindanao. Then, decades later, war came again. In 1942, Japanese forces landed in the Philippines. Teresa was in her 70s. Too old to fight, but the fire still burned. She sold her land, her possessions, her heirlooms. Everything went to the guerrilla resistance. She cooked for fighters, helped hide them. She gave everything, again. And again, history stayed silent. Teresa Magbanua died in August 1947. No headlines, no military funeral, no monuments. She never had children, never married. She left behind only stories, and even those began to fade. But not in Iloilo, not in Patodan. There, the stories are still whispered. Of the woman who led warriors. Of the teacher who became a tactician. Of the sister who buried her brothers and fought on. Today, her name is carved into street signs. A Philippine Coast Guard ship bears her name. A few statues stand in her honor. But it's not enough. Teresa Magbanua is not just a regional heroine. She is national history. In a world that asked her to sit down, Teresa stood up. In a time that demanded she be quiet, she roared. In 3 wars, she gave everything and asked for nothing. She was not a Joan of Arc copy. She was the original Visayan flame. A warrior, a teacher, a symbol. She was Teresa Magbanua. Remember her name.